Hello and welcome. My name's Peter. I'm the solo developer behind Gallery Games. It's been 2 months since my last devlog, so it's time to cover some of the major changes that have occurred since we last checked in on Gallery's first game, Risk and Riches, which, by the way, can now be wishlisted on Steam. The link is in the description. If you missed the first devlog, I urge you to check it out. For a quick recap, we covered my thoughts and approach to the initial design for the game, the creation of the prototype, my Alpha 0.1 and 0.2 playtests, some of the art and design rework that was occurring at the time, and a rough roadmap for the trailer, demo, and game release. With that out of the way, here's what's been going on since late May. In late May, I had just begun the character, card, and equipment rework. I ended up not only redesigning the different cards and equipment, but I also refactored quite a bit of code to separate the player character and the run from the player data. When I was first putting things together for the prototype and playtest, there was only one playable character, and I allowed things to overlap too much. So in order to allow players to choose from multiple characters and implement a cleaner saving and loading system, I had to make a clear distinction between the player's data and the player character being used in any given run. In roguelites and roguelikes, character states, game states, and player states constantly change and reset, so it was essential that each piece was independent. It took me a few days to rework it all, and I'm very happy with it, but much of the work and time was due to how the language I'm working in is dynamically typed, so the IntelliSense, so to speak, doesn't often catch things that should be obvious, like calling functions that no longer exist. So finding and hunting down all of the changes that needed to be made took quite a while. This is definitely something that could have been avoided if I took more time planning things out ahead of time. For the next project, I definitely plan on spending more time on my pre-production. As far as the cards and equipment, they were drastically improved. I took a lot of the feedback from my previous playtests and approached the cards with greater intention to make sure they fit into the intended playstyles for each character. Each character has 2 planned playstyles, but many of the cards also allow for combination builds, and I'm sure that players will surprise me in how they end up using certain characters. I don't want to spoil too much, but the current playable character, the Prospector, is built for either gaining a lot of gold and taking advantage of the purchasable utility cards in the game, or you can build him to do damage over time and explosive damage with burn abilities while hiding behind some higher block cards. You can also just use him as your moneymaker to unlock things quicker, but at the risk of having to grind a bit more and not necessarily test yourself by making it further into the mine. I also implemented many more events during the redesign. For my initial playtests, there were only 5 random events that could occur, but I upped that to 25 and made them far more interesting as well. And I reworked the AI for the enemies, that instead of having a moveset that they randomly picked from, they actually follow patterns and consider what to do next given the state of play. Obviously, some are more complex than others, but the bosses in particular really benefited from this and it made them more interesting. There's still more tweaking and balancing that will occur for months to come, but it's night and day between the older builds and the current Alpha 1.0. The town phase of the game has gone through a few iterations. In the prototype, it didn't exist. You just went to a shop in between runs, but it was always planned to have a town that you could build up and would contain all of the permanent unlocks. In the Alpha 0.1 playtest, the shops and mine existed in a town, but you didn't really build anything yet. You clicked on the building as if they were buttons to enter them. In the Alpha 0.2 playtest, there was a menu that only showed available buildings, and once built, you still clicked on them to open them up. Now, in the Alpha 1.0 build, you no longer click on any buildings, since many of them were never going to be interactable. Instead, there's a building menu that shows all the buildings that can still be built and their requirements. And once built, if they have any sort of interactability, they add new buttons to the UI while in the town phase. I thought it was best to do it that way because it makes it obvious what is interactable versus what isn't. As nice as it would be to have people selecting the buildings directly, I didn't want anyone to become confused or think that things weren't working because some buildings didn't seem to do anything. The barber shop, for instance, just increases character health, while the peddler's wagon is the initial utility card shop and opens a shop menu. Other than the redesign and refactoring that occurred, the other major update was adding and improving sprites. Alpha 1.0 was the first build to have images on all of the ability and utility cards. None of them had images before. I updated the sprites for the equipment that existed and created sprites for new equipment that was added as part of the redesign. All the new events were given unique images to go along with them. I also either improved or created things like menu backgrounds and buttons and eliminated all but one gray box background. Some of the menus were more drastically improved than others, such as the inventory screen, which was a blank background but now has a backpack behind it and a dark transparent layer so that the cards are easy to read. The least amount of work went into the summary screen since it's still being played around with. There's a lot of work to do still, but I'm pretty proud of the progress that's been made so far. I have a programmer and production background, so art isn't my strongest skill, and with that in consideration, I think the game has a good look to it. I am using an AI sprite generator to help concept things in detail quite a bit faster, but there's still a lot of work to get things looking how I envision them, and getting things to look somewhat consistent and cleaning up the artifacts from the AI. I've also done most of the UI myself. Everything is going to get some additional polish, but right now I think the effects and backgrounds need the most improvement. As correctly pointed out by a commenter, a Goomba, there are some scaling issues with some of the images, most noticeably the backgrounds, which will be addressed. However, the backgrounds themselves are a low priority at the moment. A few other changes that are worth mentioning are the addition of background music, a settings menu that allows you to adjust the volume of different audio channels, an updated save and load system as a result of the refactoring I did regarding player data, and the ability to view your draw, discard, exhausted, and banished card piles, which is a common mechanic in deck builder games to provide further information to the player. It's also going to be important for the playstyles of a couple of the upcoming playable characters. Everything that I worked on to get to Alpha 1.0 needed to happen, but there was definitely a major focus on adding graphics in particular, as I was getting ready to publish the Alpha 1.0 trailer and Steam page for Risk and Riches. The link to the trailer should be up right now if you haven't seen it. I plan on focusing on the process for creating the Steam page in my next video, so I'm not going to go into detail right now, but the trailer and store page were also a good portion of the work that was done over the last 2 months. Again, I'm Peter, the solo developer behind Growlery Games. If you're a fan of deck builders or turn-based roguelike games, please check out Risk and Riches on Steam, link in the description. And of course, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to join me on this journey. I'll see you in the next one.